Hey everybody, it's Bobby Angel here at the Campfire, and I'm out here in the Big Cypress, kind of near the coastal, a little kind of near the coastal area, and there's this place called Barron River. There's a big city right down the road, Everglades City, and then there's that was my idea, I wanted to have a campfire out on the river, but it's one of those situations where they came in and they dug a canal. It's easier to find the canal than it is the river. And the canal kind of stole the name of the river. And that old saying, robbing Peter to pay Paul, that somebody moved in and took over the name, Barron River. So there's a river out there somewhere, and I was aiming to have the campfire, right by its banks. There's some crabs or something on the ground, hermit crabs. I think they're not hermit crabs, but they're little crabs. They're kind of moving in all sorts of directions. I moved one way and they all kind of moved the other way, and I felt like I was kind of a director at a composer at a orchestra. I don't know if that describes it very well. And right up the river, or the canal, as I guess it goes, the river never went that far, but the canal goes all the way up. Well, I guess it goes all the way up to a place called Immokalee. Might even go past that. But about, before it gets there, it originally went to this place, Deep Lake. Maybe that would have been a better place for the campfire. That glassy surface and the campfire. And I just wanted to sing some songs about, and think about, whenever I'm out here in nature, I kind of like thinking about the place. The history behind how the canal got there, the mystery of Deep Lake. So kind of think about that. Well, let's get right to a song. This is a song about a feller who, a little bit like a Paul Bunyan character, he cut down a bunch of melaleuca, cut down the forest. When your accomplishment is kind of getting rid of something, then you leave this beautiful landscape for others to enjoy. But then they don't realize, all the work that might have gone into getting that beautiful scenery back. So I thought to sing that song. It's called One More Melaleuca for the Road. So let's just get into that. And then maybe we'll talk a little bit about the history of Deep Lake. How does that sound? So let's get into this song. Let me tune this chord. And this is about a Paul Bunyan type character. He didn't cut down he cut down the bad trees. Not that they were bad trees, they were just growing in the wrong spot. I spoke to Tony, he was the one, and he said, he wished that he could have just replanted all the trees. And he looked at that, what if we put all the trees and just dug them up and we took them in a boat back to Australia, where they're from, they're the Melaleuca. The trees were in agreement, let's do that. But there were cost considerations, and one thing led to another. Anyhow, let's go to the song, and then we'll talk about Deep Lake. He steps up off the asphalt and down into the swamp. He scans across the prairie, he knows exactly what he wants. He drags his blade behind him, he carries poison in his vest. He plants his boots on top of the roots, there's a pounding in his chest. One more melaleuca for the road. One more melaleuca before he goes to the park down below. Cut the cypress, it said they fell without a sound. And the farmers picked tomatoes from what's a washed away ghost town. He chugs his Mr. Pibb and he chucks it in the canal. He kick-starts his chainsaw, he's going back for another round. One more melaleuca for the road. One more melaleuca before he goes to the park down below. The litter on 29, it lies where of the stone. The horizon line is blotted out by a tropical cyclone. The wind it is whipping, the sawgrass it's bending in the breeze. But he's heading right into the eye. He's got unfinished business before he leaves. One more Melaleuca for the road. One more Melaleuca before he goes to the park down below. Talk more about the connection between State Road 29, Deep Lake, and the Barron River and the old railroad, and why in the Sandhill would you ever design a road that's going smack dab towards the deepest, only sinkhole lake in the Big Cypress, let alone South Florida, and then at the last minute do kind of a little, not a hairpin turn, but a little semicircle around it and avoid it. I was like, God, why would you ever design a road so close to such a valuable resource? Meanwhile, you can't really even, it's a little bit of a trek to get there. That always puzzled me. I thought, that what an abomination that they would do that. That's State Road 29, 9 miles north of US 41 and about 11 miles south of Alligator Alley. And Deep Lake, it's one of 3 sinkhole lakes in South Florida, and it's the deepest. It's conically shaped. There's speculation that, well, maybe it's, I think the bottom sediments, they carbon dated to 5,000 or 6,000 years before present. Unlike warm mineral springs, where they've identified archaeological evidence that traces back to the original Native American tribes that lived there 11,000 years ago. So Native American tribes were living in South Florida before the Everglades formed. And it wasn't until the Everglades formed that kind of the biological bounty really resulted in a renaissance of those tribes. But going back to the road, why would they design a road running right to it? It always baffled me. It only live in couldn't you just have put it over a mile? God, give that lake some breathing room. It's only 300 feet across. And it dawned on me the other day when I was driving, but of course, the modern re-engineering of the road, they looped the road away from the lake, because when it was first built, State Road 29 didn't go from Everglades City to LaBelle. No, it went from Everglades City up to Deep Lake. Deep Lake was the original destination. There was a citrus, a grapefruit grove there, and it was a hunting camp. It was the destination. It was a tourist draw. Then when they eventually completed the rail line, originally it wasn't a road, but a rail line up to Perry, that's where the giant cypress, when they were logged, that's where they went. It still went right by Deep Lake. Deep Lake was still a destination. It was probably, of course, you're going to go by the only destination. It was almost like the Sentinel cypress tree on the Caloosahatchee, on Lake Okeechobee, when they cut the 3-mile canal from Lake Hickpachee to Lake Okeechobee. They picked a spot where there was a landmark. There was a little bit of a hammock there around Deep Lake. So maybe it wasn't Deep Lake as much as it was the hammock that was primo citrus growing country, plus the fact, when the name of the gentleman is escaping me, who built it back in the early 1900s, maybe 1913. They built a little grade to pull their produce to market. It would go down to the coast and probably ship it over to Fort Myers. There was no canal there, so Deep Lake was a water source, is what it was. It was a water source for the citrus grove. That's why it went there, I would presume. So there you have it. It finally dawned on me, and sometimes it takes over 20 years for the simple explanation to unfold. State Road 29 originally didn't go farther north than Deep Lake, and the destination was Deep Lake, and that explains why in the modern day version they routed the road around it, but still they could have given it a more generous curve. In my view, if I was the road engineer, I would have given it a much wider berth, and I'm going to work on that yet. I'm going to talk to a transportation engineer. Well, there you have it, and we're going to talk more about State Road 29, but wanted to get that out of the way first because that always kind of bugged me. I was gonna strum the guitar, but let's play one more song. Why don't we play one more song? Thinking about that curve in the road. The road originally, roads have a life cycle. The secret life of roads. And you think a road's just there and it was built there. No, it kind of developed over time. And that's kind of interesting. And it makes me think of a song. And let me play that song, and maybe we'll talk about what happened in the past, or maybe what's going to happen in the future on the road. When you're driving on a road, you're looking ahead. You're looking down the road, and you can see things. And then you look in the rearview mirror, and you're like, whoa, look at the line of cars behind me. I must be driving too slow. And I look down, and I'm like, well, I'm driving the speed limit, even 1 mile below the speed limit. That really generates a line. I always say to people, how do you draw a line? You go slow in a vehicle, and you get a line behind you. Or with a pen and paper, you can draw a line. Go the speed limit is my thought. So let me just play this song right here, and then we'll launch into a discussion on what lies ahead. We just discussed what lies behind in the rearview mirror, then what lies ahead, or around the bend. You notice that sometimes you're going around a bend, and you're like, I wonder what's around that bend. And then you get to where it straightens out, and you can see way in the distance. And I think after this song, we're going to see way in the distance. But way in the distance, gets there. Sometimes people talk about pie in the sky ideas, but, if you get in the car and you drive even 1 mile below the speed limit, you eventually get there. And I think we're going to get there on this Barron River Road Canal / River State Road 29 thing. Yeah, I really do. Well, without further ado, I don't know, let me think about what song I'm going to sing. And okay, why don't we do this one? The world, it's kind of funny, and it gets stranger and stranger by the day. I see it's less and less like a football, and more like a stack of hay. You do with it what you wanna. There are many straws for you to take. You can't be wasting your time searching for a needle, 'cause you gotta keep your eyes peeled for the lucky break. So I'll be going off to where I'm going. I'll wave farewell around the bend. I got a plan and it's quite a plenty. I'll run till light meets its end. But choppy can get sorta lonely, I've seen 'em coming and I've seen 'em leave. Somewhere in there I became an old timer. I never thought that would happen to me. But all men's days are numbered. If it ain't in days, then it's months or it's years. And you gotta do what you gotta to prepare for it, and learn to let go when that day draws near. So I'll be going off to where I'm going. I'll wave farewell around the bend, and as I go I learn a plenty. The lessons never seem to end. I wonder what they're doing. If they made it big or they settled down, and if that's really what they wanted, or if it's only what they found. My mama said to me, you be friendly. My pa said, son, you out there, you do good. Me, I try to look on the bright side and be humble. and occasionally I knock on wood. So I'm going back to where I'm going. I'll wave farewell around the bend. I'll miss you all quite a plenty. I wish to see you all again. David Moody Blues, and I wrote this about a young fella who kind of passed through the swamp, and he kind of arrived a young guy, and he left. He was still a young guy, but he saw, he saw over just a couple seasons how he aged, and all of a sudden it didn't take long for him to become an old timer. Kind of set him on the right path in life, and when he left, he drove up State Road 29. When he was leaving. So, yeah, I mean, just tune a string here, and we'll go into it.
Let's talk about comparative canals. And the two that are probably the most obvious comparisons are State Road 29 and US 41. Now, US 41 has a catchy name, the Tamiami Trail. Compared that to the State Road 29, sometimes it's called the Barron River Canal, but it's never called Barron River Road, to my knowledge. And only really Barron River Canal applies to the southern section south of US 41. So the Tamiami Trail, it has a catchy name. State Road 29 doesn't. Let's do another comparison. The Tamiami Trail, it is often confused as a Indian name. It sounds like a trail. Tamiami Trail, was that an old Indian trading route? No, it was a name given by a booster back in 1913 when they were trying to get that inland route between Miami and Tampa, but first going across to Naples. But when you think about the two words, it's a compound of Tampa and Miami. They're both Indian terms. So you could say, yeah, in a roundabout way, Tamiami is an Indian term, where State Road 29, it's just a country road, right? It's kind of so the Tamiami Trail cuts across the Everglades. It was the original kind of salvo and the drainage of the Everglades, and it would be used as the main stem of the eventual Army Corps of Engineers Central and Southern Florida project that cordoned off the Everglades from the urban East Coast and from the Big Cypress and stored all the water. Then when Everglades restoration came to town, Tamiami Trail was the first place that got the treatment, whether it was trying to get more water through the S12As or more recently shifting water over to the new bridges and raising the trail. Tamiami Trail's in the center of it all. When people think Everglades and Everglades drainage and its restoration, Tamiami Trail is front and center to getting water to Everglades National Park. State Road 29, that's a country road. But, we want to eat our cake and have it too, because we often call the Big Cypress an extension of the Everglades. We call it the Western Everglades. And when you look at State Road 29, it runs orthogonal. It runs not orthogonal, it runs parallel to the regional flow path. So the Tamiami Trail, it was kind of a dam originally. And now the idea is to open it up and bridge it so water goes through. But State Road 29 is a combination dam and short circuit for splitting the Big Cypress in two. And not only splitting it in two, but going right through the heart of the most important geographic spot in the Big Cypress. It's called the Ocallocoochee Slough Fakahatchee East Hinson Marsh Flowway. It's where Ocallocoochee Slough flows into the Big Cypress and then forks into the Panther Refuge down to Fakahatchee Strand, and on the other side into East Hinson Marsh and down to Deep Lake Strand and Mullet Slough. It's kind of the primary water artery into the Big Cypress, and it's completely severed by State Road 29 canal and blocked by the roadbed, and all that water is shunted south during the wet season. Meanwhile, during the dry season, the canal drops water below the groundwater table deeper and longer than it should be, really making that area much more vulnerable to drought and lowering the hydro periods in all those orchid hiding central sloughs within Fakahatchee and Deep Lake Strand, etc., and all the flow systems that are tied to it. So what's my point is that we need a better name for State Road 29. I mean, the US 41 is called the Tamiami Trail, and everybody's embraced that, and it's been re-engineered multiple times to improve water flows and get the water right, depending on what year you're in. Meanwhile, State Road 29 has never been touched. We put some chintzy stop gates in there in the 1950s, and they've pretty much been untouched since. And when the Big Cypress was formed, that was the top recommendation. State Road 29 is a major drain out of the Big Cypress, yet here we are 50 years later, nothing's been done to it. Why not? It's because State Road 29 doesn't have a name. We need to rename it. We need to rebrand it. It needs to be called the Fakahatchee Freeway. The Fakahatchee Freeway. Why? Because it parallels the Fakahatchee. Why? Because it's a gateway to the Fakahatchee. Why? Because it steals Fakahatchee's water and it drains it out to tide at the peril of the ecosystem, imperiling the ghost orchid swamps, imperiling the alligator habitat, and all the above. The naming is vital. The naming is vital. Another comparative is over in the Tamiami, we talk about decompartmentalization. We want the water, the infrastructure to be sheet flow neutral, that it doesn't see the infrastructure, and we spread the water out. And that's a multi-billion-dollar project in the Everglades, with the Tamiami Trail kind of being a key kink or cog in that pursuit. Yet in State Road 29, I would say it's a hundreds of million-dollar project, but with one fell swoop, if we're able to fix and replumb State Road 29, you effectively decompartmentalize and unify the entire Big Cypress swamp. Right now, it's balkanized. You have the eastern Big Cypress and the western Big Cypress, and it's separated by a canal that's just hemorrhaging water out of it. So what is my point? We need to reframe State Road 29 as being in the same sentence and same order of impact as the Tamiami Trail. Just like the Tamiami Trail was the opening act on drainage in the Everglades, so was State Road 29. It's just never been touched. It was such an effective drain, there was no reason to touch it. And it's on an Everglades scale because multi-stakeholders are involved in multi-water uses. For example, at its upstream end, it's relied upon for drainage from residential and agricultural communities. Yet on the downstream end, the Panther Refuge, Fakahatchee, Big Cypress National Preserve depend upon that water that just bypasses it down the canal. Yet there's two catch-22s. The two catch-22s are the downstream preserve and refuge and Fakahatchee are unable to put even a small weir in State Road 29 because that would cause potential flooding upstream, and you would need to put a weir in to kind of steer water into the natural areas. So that's a catch-22. You can't do even a minor fix without it propagating upstream. Meanwhile, even if we could do that minor fix legally and from an ecosystem standpoint, we can't accept the water because it's nutrient impaired. So it goes back to this being an Everglades scale problem, that the only solution is the big solution, and that means filling in the canal, that means putting kind of a Picayune style pump station, that means treating the storm water to the north at other strategic locations, so we're sending clean water into the ecosystem. But the only solution is the big solution, and I go back to the Fakahatchee Freeway. Right now, State Road 29 is kind of a blighted corridor. It's a real white-knuckle drive, and it's a dirty canal on the one side. You know, what if it got beautified into a restoration corridor? All of a sudden, that would make the Fakahatchee Freeway, the main north-south corridor, into the growing population center of Collier County down into the Big Cypress and Everglades. How beautiful would that be? And vice versa. It would be a wonderful gateway for these new communities that are going up there. The Corps has identified the big fix, and the district has too, but they're waiting for a financial partner. Well, let's not do transportation and land development and water development in separate silos. Here's a chance where we can combine forces, and if everybody chips in financially, we can kind of build that big solution that works for everyone and turns State Road 29 into the same sort of scenic gateway into the Everglades that Tamiami Trail is becoming. And it would have just the most wonderful name, the Fakahatchee Freeway. And driving it, you kind of get this warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that, wow, we did the big transportation, water, and land development fix, and it's good for the economy and it's good for the downstream environment. Or we can let the substandard status quo only get worse by ignoring the water problem. I think you know where my vote is. So there you have it. It's all in a name, and I think it starts with rebranding State Road 29 to the Fakahatchee Freeway.
It's a lot like maybe naming a sports team. You know, we have to do the same thing in our watersheds. We protect what we understand, and we understand what we can hang a name to. Well, there you have it, folks. I think we learned something around this campfire, and I do think the campfire is around the canal. I was hoping to get it at the river, but the canal was just easier to find. Maybe next time we'll do it up at Deep Lake, you know. And I think I'm not too far from Deep Lake. I might just walk there in the morning after I wake up. That'll be a good refreshing walk. I find that, you know, when I get up in the morning, I just like to get out in some fresh air, you know, splash some water on my face. Everybody says drink a cup of coffee, and I'm like, no, if you splash some water in your face, that probably is the best way to wake up, and it might be worth 2 cups of coffee, in my experience. So, well, that, you know, the best thing you can hope for is to get a good night's rest, you know, after campfire. And that's why we do these campfire talks, is not to bore you. You know, if we're probably not doing a good talk here, and by we, I'm saying my guitar and the campfire, and you listening if you fall asleep halfway through, or maybe that's what a campfire is all about. Campfire isn't really complete until you have somebody kind of fall asleep at the campfire, and then that's when you know it's kind of time to go to sleep. You know, it's kind of the opposite of an alarm clock. The campfire slowly lulls you to sleep, and then an alarm clock wakes you up. And the campfire the campfire just doesn't suddenly kind of relight. So it's not good in that way. It's better for helping you, tell you when you need to go to sleep. And I wouldn't use a campfire as an alarm clock, like, hey, I'm going to set the campfire and then I'm going to get up. That doesn't work usually, in my experience. Well, there you have it, folks. If you're still awake, I appreciate you kind of making it through the end here. And I'm just going to strum the guitar a little. And eventually I'll get real drowsy too. And hit the hay, you know, as the expression is. Hit the hay. Hit the hay. And, well, thanks for stopping by, Barron. Wherever we are, Barron something canal. I think it's the right canal. There's so many canals out here, you kind of lose track. I just tell you, you know, it's just good to be out here at the campfires. I'm just going to strum, and thanks for stopping by.